There's a familiar tune. Now, where were we? Yes, I was telling you, wasn't I, about when I was in the Navy. They decided they'd give me a commission and they sent me to the Isle of Man. And I went to HMS Valkyrie. And I hadn't been there very long when I was looking out of my cabin window one day, and I looked out in Douglas Harbour in the dead of night, and I saw, with horror, there was an enemy submarine actually in the harbour in Douglas. Sitting there, I could see it absolutely clearly, this silhouette of this big German submarine. And I'd only been there for a very short time. I rushed to the telephone and I phoned up the dockyard, and I said, get the 2 MTBs out, get them round quick. I said, because right in the bay, there is a German submarine. It's either broken down or something's happened, but it's there. And if you get a light on it, you'll get a shot at it, and we've got a German submarine. And so they said, right, come on, tally-ho. And round they came. And I was waiting, and they went whap with the searchlights. And there was an island with a castle on it that had been there for 2,000 years. Any of you know Douglas Harbour? Do you? Well, you see it there. There it is. So I was expelled. I didn't last long. So I went back into another job with Naval Intelligence Division on security staff, which was fun, because I spent a certain amount of time in the war meetings behind the head of Naval Intelligence, and Churchill sat at the end, and he used to smoke his stogies and his cigars, and put these cigars out in an ashtray, and when the meetings were over, everybody would leap up, and I'd leap up, and I'd say, right, sir, carry on, thanks, sir. Thank you, sir. There's, take the papers, and so we'll clear up Mr. Churchill's thing. And I'd take the ashtray with all the cigar butts and like that into a little bag that I carried, and I used to sell the butts for $25. Believe me, a Churchill cigar was worth a lot of money in those days. We were up to all sorts of dodges. I enjoyed my time with NID, particularly because there was a very good tea boy. He made a marvellous cup of tea, and his name was Callaghan, actually, James Callaghan. Yeah, that's him, yes. And he was in the same division. Whenever I see Jim Callaghan now, I say, Jim, make us a cup of tea, there's a good lad. He's lovely. Jon Pertwee, the film director, and a lot of strange people. We enjoyed the job. I must tell you a couple of things that we did. You never believe how stupid people can be. I and a friend of mine in the division hired a costume of German officers with the hats up and the Iron Cross and the boots. And we walked, the two of us, the whole way from Piccadilly Circus right up to the BBC. And the whole way up we walked, and people saluted us. Now, if we'd been lynched, it would have been our own fault entirely. You couldn't believe it. People are extraordinary. If you have a plum, you can get away with it. I saw a little man in a pub once. He looked exactly like Hitler. And I said, could I take a photograph of you? And he said, yeah. And I took this picture, and I had this photograph made up, and I stuck it in a passport. Underneath, I put Adolf Schicklgruber. And we had a German stamp on it that they did in the offices of NID. And I went to a secret station, which was HMS Vernon. And I went in a car, and the fellow stopped and said, right, can I have your papers, please, sir? And I said, yes, you can have my papers. He said, thank you very much, sir. He said, right, sir, thank you very much, sir. Adolf Schicklgruber, with my photograph. I joined then, after that, the Naval Broadcasting Section, and while I was there, a young sailor appeared. My commanding officer was, well, how can I put it? Yes. The young chap who was there looked very pretty in his uniform, and his name was David Jacobs. And he was about 17. He'd lied about his age to get in, and our commanding officer used to call him David, and he called me, he said, Pertwee. And I was a lieutenant commander, and I thought, I don't want to be called Pertwee when the sailor is called David. There's something going on here. Aye, I said. Very intelligent, very perspicacious of me. So when we were out one day in a tube train, and we were sitting opposite some people, David said, oh. And I said, what's the matter? He said, have a look. And I looked, there was a beautiful girl, lovely girl, beautiful figure, long blonde hair, and sitting on. I said, but that's no interest to you, is it? He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's not your style, is it, really? You know what I mean? He said, no, I don't know what you mean. And I said, well, you and the commanding officer, you know what I mean. He said, no, I don't know what you mean. He didn't. He didn't know what I meant at all. And so I said, well, I think I better tell you. So I told him. He said, oh, my God, no, that's not... Really? And I said, yes. He said, oh, my God. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I got you wrong, and I've been treating you very badly, and that's because I thought that you and he were a pair. You see, we're a sort of item. No, so I took him for tea at the Windmill Theatre, backstage, where all the girls rushed from dressing room to dressing room. They didn't bother with dressing gowns and things. They hadn't got the time. Blah, blah, blah. And David had a wonderful time. Oh, he had a wonderful time. He never looked back after that. And I became one of his greatest friends, and he still is one of my greatest friends. And his mother used to give us the most wonderful food. His father was a fruit merchant in Covent Garden, and so we had wonderful meat, because he used to, swap this for a bit of that and that, a bit of this, and we lived well. While we were there, we used to go around on trips and listen to people's conversations, and I was fascinated. We were going up from Parliament Square up to Trafalgar Square, and there's a theatre up at the end called the Whitehall Theatre, and had a play on it called Seagulls Over Sorrento. A very popular play, a service play. And there were two girls sitting in front of us, and one girl said, here, Phyllis, I'm going to the theatre Thursday. The other one said, oh yeah, what are you going to see? She said, I think it's called Sea Lions in Toronto. And the other one said, oh, that sounds nice. She said, is that the one with the Chinaman in it? The other one said, no, I don't think so. She said, pity, I like a Chinaman in a play. Now, would you believe dialogue like that? I mean, it is extraordinary. There's nothing funnier. As they say, there's not so queer as folk. And believe me, when you listen to what some people say, I'll give you some examples. One girl said to the other one, she said, here, she said, budge up, Phyllis, I've only got one cheek on. She said, how's your dad? She said, oh, he's better, but he still has to stand sideways. I worked at the Café de Paris in London, and I came out of the kitchens. I wasn't going to come down the stairs after Marlene Dietrich and Noah Coward. I couldn't handle the gall to do that. I came through the kitchens, and the things I heard in the kitchens, I mean, there was one wonderful thing when a waiter came in, and he banged a tray down, and he said, oh, well, he's eaten it. Eaten what? It's incredible, isn't it? I remember listening to Cabaret, and there were two magicians, and one magician turned to the other and said, you know, boy, you've got no idea how difficult it is to get a budgerigar out of a treacle tart. And these are all true, I swear. My director, James Hill, who directed Wurzel Gummidge, he heard a lovely conversation where a girl said, so I stood there till my vest was wringing wet. And the other one said, yes, well, you would, wouldn't you? She said, could it have been a horse? She said, no. No, it was nibbled. And I know nibbling when I see it. She said, could it have been a rabbit? She said, no. Rabbits can't reach hanging baskets. Now, what the hell was that all about? Oh, I love it. I love those sort of conversations. Anyway, David and I had great fun in this division. And while I was there, I had to check up on various people doing and saying naughty things on radio. There was a show called Mediterranean Merry-Go-Round then with Eric Barker. And he was being rather rude about my lords of the Admiralty. And so I was sent along to check up on him. And when I was there, he said, I want somebody to shout out something from the audience. And I said, I'll do it. He said, what's your name? I said, Pertwee. He said, do you remember of the Pertwee family? I said, yes. He said, oh, good, yeah, you can do it. And I had to shout out a line. He and his wife, Pearl Hackney, were arguing. And I had to say, oi, leave him alone. You're always picking on the poor perisher. And she's supposed to turn round and she'd say, who on earth is that? And Eric's supposed to look into the audience and say, oh, that's the Minister of Education. Now, that's precisely the kind of joke I was sent down there to stop him doing. But I got an enormous laugh with it, and I was so proud. It was the first laugh I'd ever had. I'd been a straight actor before. I'd never done something from the audience, and I was thrilled. And so after the show, Eric said, very good, I enjoyed that, you did that well. He said, what were you here for? I said, well, I was a spy. I'm coming here to spy on you and report on you. He said, well, what sort of spy are you going to be? I said, terrible. And he said, do you want to come back next week? I said, yes. So I came back the next week, and I brought a character with me, because I'd heard on the news, and that's Alvarly Dell at the end of the news. Good night. Here is the news in Norwegian, and a voice said, Jeden, Joden, Jeden, Nigger, Corrupte Bombe. I said, what did they say? And the next day I listened again, he said, Jeden, Joden, Jeden, Nigger, Corrupte Bombe. So I went to a Norwegian that I knew at the Admiralty, and I said, what does the jeden, joden, jeden, nigger de bombit mean? He said, nothing. I said, well, that's what they say every night. He said, well, de bombit probably means something to do with bombing. I said, well, it's very strange. So I went to Eric and I said, I've got a character for you. He said, what is it? I said, he's a Norwegian seaman. His name's Svensson. And Eric said, yes, what does he say? I said, he says, jeden, joden, jeden, nigger de bombit. So Eric said, is that funny? I said, it will be. And so when we came in on that week, he said, Svensson. And I said, jeden. He said, how are you? I said, joden. He said, what have you been doing? I said, nigger de bombit. Within a fortnight, practically the entire United Kingdom was saying, jeden, joden, jeden, nigger de bombit. And to this day, people sometimes come up to me and say, jeden, joden, jeden, nigger de bombit. So I was with him then for 5 years, which is good. I came out of the Navy and I stayed on with Eric in Waterlog Spa for years and years and years. And I joined Jewel and Wallace in Up the Pole with Claude Dampier and had a big run with that. And I was doing plays at the same time. I did a play with Ralph Richardson called The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse. In this, he was trying to find out what made criminals tick, why they did the things they did, and he was trying to study them. And we were sitting round in a room and we were playing cards, and I was playing a little Cockney pickpocket. And I said, right, it's 2 no trumps, your turn, Doc. And he's supposed to say, but I've already had my cards. And I said in the queue, and I said, right, 2 no trumps, your turn, Doc. Your turn, Doc. And Ralph Richardson went. So we knew he'd gone. And I said, no, that's right, yeah, I'm 2 no trumps, and it's your turn, Doc. And he said, yeah. And from the wings now came the prompts. I've already had my cards. Huh? I have already... And then from up here from the flies, from the flymen, I've already had my cards. And down here in the orchestra pit, I've already had my cards. And eventually Ralph Richardson threw his cards down on the table, turned to the wings and said, I know, you bloody fool, but who says it? I was in a play with the lovely Dame Edith Evans. And there was a wonderful story about Dame Edith. She got into a taxi and she said, drive me to the theatre. And the cab driver said, I'm not driving you nowhere, madam, not with that pooch. She said, you will drive me to the theatre at once. He said, no, madam, I told you I'm not taking that dog in my cab. And she said, then you will drive me to the police station, which is the law. I don't know whether you knew that. And so he said, oh, we're all right then. But keep an eye on it. And they drove to the Haymarket Theatre. And she got out, and he'd been grumbling all through the journey. And when she got out, she gave him the exact fare with no tip, and she got out and she walked away. And he turned round to check that nothing was left behind, and there was a puddle in the back of the cab. And he said, oh, I knew it. He said, here, madam, your dog has just peed in my cab. And she said, wrong, I peed in your cab. Lovely. I did a lot of films in those days, a lot of movies. We had made about 5 or 6 films a year. And I was under contract with ABPC with George Cole, and George and I made pictures together. We made a film you may have seen called Will Any Gentleman. It was shown on television just a short time ago. And during the break, I said to George, come on, let's go backstage and see the girls. Neither of us were married. We'll go and check the girls out. And we went into the theatre scene, and there were all these modern ballet dancers, the best there were in England. And there was one girl sitting there, and she was ravishing. She was absolutely beautiful. And I said, hi, hello, how are you? Good morning, all right? And she went... And I thought, that didn't go down very well. But all the rest of them were saying, morning, Mr. Pertwee, good morning, Mr. Cole, hello, hello, hello. And I really was determined to crack this and find out why this girl was being so cold and miserable to me. And so every day I'd come in and say, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Okay? So I really felt very bad about this indeed, and I couldn't understand it. And George said, what have you done? Have you insulted the girl? I said, I don't know, I don't understand it at all. And I was going home that night, and I was going out of the studio and going through the main gates, and she was walking. There she had sunglasses on, and she was walking along. And I said, hello, hello, and she turned to me and she said, hello, how are you, Mr. Pertwee? And I thought, that's funny. So I said, are you going to London? She said, yes. I said, would you like a lift? She said, yes, I'd love one, thank you so much. And she got in the car and she said, oh, this is lovely, thank you so much. And I said, tell me something, why have you been so bloody unfriendly to me for for the last fortnight. And she said, have we met? I said, what do you mean, have we met? I've said good morning to you every day. I've offered you cups of coffee. And she said, good God, was that you? And I said, well, of course it was me. She said, I can't see a thing without my glasses. And so I married her. You're dying to know what her name is. Her name is Jean Marsh. Remember Jean? In upstairs, downstairs? Yeah, we're still great friends. She's a terrible wife, but she's a marvellous friend. No, she had a great career ahead of her, and she wanted to pursue her career, and I didn't want that. I wanted a wife, and I wanted some kids. So I married again later. I married a lovely girl called Ingeborg, a German girl, and I got 2 kids, Sean and Daryl. Sean now doing terribly well in the film business, and Daryl has just joined the National Theatre Company, and so I'm very proud of them. I had a lot to do with sport, too, in those days. I was a very keen skier, water skier. Wonderful story. I was skiing in the south of France, and a friend of mine had a boat with a Zeppelin engine in it. And he said, well, I'll take you on the Grand Parade. You carry the banner for England. And so I was going to be like Sister Anna carrying the banner, you know, the big flag. And there was the French flag and the Italian flag and the American flag. And we all went off in a line. We went out to the jetty at Juan-les-Pins, and we all turned round and went out to sea, going up towards the jetty with all the celebrities and all the important people, the VIPs sitting. And below it there was a pontoon where you went skiing from, about that high. So I put 3 ropes on the end of my towing rope because the boat was so fast that I needed more room to maneuver. And he forgot. And so we headed straight for the pontoon with all the people sitting on it, and I realized he wasn't turning quick enough. And I went on and on and on, and they all went, this map is going straight on, and I knew there was going to be a disaster. And so my ski, I was on a slalom ski with a big fin, and the ski and the fin hit the pontoon like that, and it catapulted me in a neat parabolic arc, straight over the heads. Everybody went, whoa. And I landed with a splash right behind them, a sort of 25 or 30 foot leap, straight out, and landed in the water, and I was screaming mad, and said, you stupid bloody... He'd come round the back. I said, he said, quiet. I said, why? I said, listen. And everyone was saying, fantastic! Vive Angleterre! Quel saut extraordinaire! Bravo! You see, they thought that I'd done it on purpose. The next year, I got a letter from the mayor of Juan-les-Pins saying, Cher Monsieur Pertwee, would you come this year and do your celebrated jump? No, I said. My other sport is diving, and I do a lot of diving, sub-aqua. And I went out eventually to the best place for sub-aqua in the world, to the Seychelles. And I was diving the Seychelles with a group of people, and there was an Irishman. And he said, you know, lads, I've never been under the water. I'm not much of a swimmer, he said, but do you think you could teach us how to do it? And we said, yeah, no problem at all. And we taught him how to, you know, fix his mask on and how to use his return valve and mouthpiece and everything. And when he said, I think I got the idea. So we went down the anchor chain, which was down about, I suppose, 60 or 70 feet. And there was a German cook who went down first. I'm a very good diver. And he went down and he looked around and he looked up at me and he went, that means over there is a biter, a shark. So just don't go too near that thing. So not that they worried you, because they don't. They've got so many fish to eat there, they don't bother you. And so I went right, and so the next diver came down, I went, and he went, and then he went over there, and I went over there. And then came the Irishman. And we went like this. And he went, ah! And he opened his mouth, and his breathing tube came out of his mouth, and he fainted under the water. Now, in a situation like that, it's no good splashing water in his face. It's very hard to get a fainted man together again, you know, and put his breathing apparatus back. And it was very difficult indeed. But we did. We managed to get him back and said, calm down. And we said, go over there. About 400 feet away, we said, stay there. Now, the last diver to come down was the leader of the expedition, a fellow from Hapag-Lloyd Travel Company, and we went... And he went round the back, because he knew that sharks don't back into holes, they come in frontwards. And so he must have come in from the back. So he went round the back with his spear gun, and he rammed his spear gun up the shark's jacksie. Well, what did the shark do? The shark went like this, and who did he make for? The Irishman. Who went, oh, this, and then fainted under the water again. We rushed to him, took him up, and he said, I've never gone in the bloody water. Yeah, I'm not only not going in it, I'm not going to drink the bloody stuff. Lovely, lovely sport. I don't snow ski very much now because I'm hideously embarrassed. Because I fall over, having done some superb skiing. People say, good God, look at that old fart going down the hill right now. And I do a wonderful, wonderful turn, and I go right into the snow, and I can't get up. And I lie there, you know, like a turtle with her legs in the air saying, please, somebody help me. And it became so embarrassing, I've given that one up. But I still sub-aqua. I've flown small light aircraft. I've flown these ridiculous hang gliders with motor mower engines, which horrified my wife to death, and she said, come down. She kept saying, I ride motorbikes, and I would still race motor cars if they had an old gentleman racing them. So I love it, I'm afraid, much to the chagrin and horror of my wife. I did the music hall. I went into the music hall and was working with the Moss Empire Circuits. Music hall was an appalling experience, ladies and gentlemen, in certain theatres. Glasgow Empire, dear God. I was there with Monty Ray, an Apache singer, Max Wall, Jimmy James, and myself. And Jimmy James said, I bloody tell you, he said, I'd bloody die here. He said, there's only one bloody thing goes here. He said, that's Negroes and piano accordionists. He said, I told them not to book me. And he was the greatest comic. Do you ever see Jimmy James? Wonderful, wonderful comedian. He went on, he died, not a titter, nothing. And he kept on, I told you. And this little Scotch guy, the singer, said, no, you got the wrong idea. You got the wrong idea, Jimmy. Don't be frightened of him. Get out there and bash him. He said, you want to watch me when I get out there, you see. I'll show you how to handle him. Don't be frightened of him. Get out there and whack him. And he said, you see. And he said, and he went off in his dressing room. I then went on, and I died. 20 minutes, I never got a titter. Not a laugh of any sort at all. And when I'd finished, they went. So I went off and I said to the manager, please pay me off. Please pay me off. He said, you're a great success. I said, I was? How did you work that out? He said, you didn't get the did you? I said, no, I didn't. He said, well then, you're a great success. Sassanas, get the as a rule. But you didn't, you well. And Monty Ray said, John, don't worry. You got the wrong idea. He said, listen, get out there and next time the next house, get out, whack them and bash it. Watch me, I can do it. Max Wall, one of the great comedians of all time, he went on and he said, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot tell you how very glad I am to be back here once again in Glasgow. And a voice as clear as a bell from the back of the gallery said, get back to your own friggin' country. And Max was horrified at this word. And he, for the first time in his life, he was spellbound. He couldn't say a word. And he said, the terrible mistake. He said, I beg your pardon. What did you say? And a man from the front row of the stalls got up and said, my friend said, get back to your own friggin' country. Well, that did it. Max went into the wings and he said, what do I do now? And the stage manager said, if you value your life, get into your dance. And Max went and went off. And he said, I've never been so embarrassed in all my life. And the little Scotsman said, no, Max. You've got the wrong idea. He said, listen, I'm on now. Watch me. So all of us gathered round to watch him. And he went on and he sang, Ora mior, sorfidaro, and the whole house, the roof came in. Hooray! Whoa, bravo. And he turned and said, see. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, he said, great. He said, it's great to be back here once again in Glasgow, because you all know I'm a Glaswegian, born and bred. And there's one man, the audience got up and said, you're a friggin' liar. And they threw the theatre at him. They tore the seats up. They tore the ashtrays out. The gallery had chicken netting all over to stop them throwing things. And they tore a hole in the chicken netting and threw things at him. They had to get a police car to take him out, covered with a rug. That's because he'd said the unfortunate thing, saying, I'm a Glaswegian born and bred, and he wasn't. And they knew it. You're a liar. So Glasgow Empire was not the happiest place to be. But I worked in variety for many, many years, and I enjoyed it. Mrs. Mack at Manchester. There was a young lady who was in the company that I was rather enamoured of, and we were both staying at Mrs. Mack's. And I was this side of the house. She had two houses with a stairway going up here and another house stairway going up there. And this lady friend of mine was staying in the other part of the house, and I was staying in this part. And so I said, you pop up, and I'll pop up and say goodnight. And so about 12:30, 1 o'clock, I crept round, and I crept up the stairs, and sitting at the top of the stairs in a chair. Oh, no, you don't, Mr. Pertwee. No, we have nothing like that in this house. Thank you very much. Get back to your own bed, she said. I knew. I could see the light in your eyes. Mrs. Mack used to come and watch some television like that. And she'd look at the television, said, I've had him. Oh, I've had her. And we didn't understand what she meant to begin with. We've had them. Yes, she said, oh, yes. She said, I could tell you some stories about them. Oh, she said she could. And she did. She told me about, I haven't the gall to tell you. Wonderful. Mrs. Mack. Great lady. I then decided that I'd do something else on radio. And it was a services show. We called it the Navy Lark. And it didn't take us long to get it set up. The BBC takes a long time to do anything now, but it didn't then. It was very, very quick. And I got a producer called Alistair Scott Johnson, a very good writer called Laurie Wyman and George Evans. We were, up until last year, the longest-running radio show in the history of broadcasting. I believe the HUD Lines has now beaten us. We ran nearly 20 years. And it was a joyful occasion, because we all used to meet on a Sunday, 25 weeks of the year, and with Ronnie Barker, Teniel Evans, Michael Bates. There's a great company of people. Ronnie Barker used to come with stories, the funniest stories you've ever heard, because he got them straight from the stock exchange, where all the best stories come from. He was with us for years and years and years, but eventually had to leave because he became so popular in his own right. He hadn't the time to devote to being in the Navy Lark, so he sadly left. Alistair Scott Johnson said, well, who are we going to get to do all the voices that Ronnie does? And I said, get somebody else and I'll bloody well kill you. He said, do you want to do them? I said, yes, I do. I was sick to death of the chief by this time. Right, left end, down a beat, flip, flip. And I got bored with that, and so I did a myriad other characters. I did about 40 characters for them. There was a character that I did in the Navy Lark called Admiral Birkinshaw. But we call him Admiral Firkinshaw. Because we said there are Birkinshaws, but there's no Firkinshaw. So we'll be all right. So there was Admiral Firkinshaw, and he was a terrible character. We got a telegram within 3 hours of transmission saying, I'm seeing my solicitor on Thursday at 10 o'clock to sue the BBC for the defamation of character, yours sincerely, Admiral Charles Firkinshaw. And it was true. The character, that character that I've been doing for years in different forms was a lady who ran the tuck shop in the school I was at Sherburn. And for years, boys said, one long bun, one short bun, please, Mrs. Thompson. And she used to say, thank you very much, Mr. Next. She never knew one boy's name in 56 years, but she had a go. Thank you very much, Mr. Next. Wonderful. And one day when I was doing the Navy Lark, Teniel Evans, Taffy Goldstein speaking, starboard look out here, sir. Taffy Goldstein said, why don't you put yourself up for Doctor Who? I hear Pat Troughton's leaving. And I said, well, I don't know, why would they want me? He said, well, you'd be a very good doctor. So I rang my agent and I said, Richard, here. I said, I've got a very good idea. How about putting me up to play Doctor Who? Richard? Richard? He said, yes? Oh, so good. I thought you'd got... Now, sorry, I quite understand. It's not a very good idea. He said, no, I think it's a terrible idea. But I'll give it a whirl. And so he rang up to the producer and he said, hello, this is Richard Stone. I'd like to suggest one of my clients to take over from Patrick Troughton as Doctor Who. And they said, who? And he said, Jon Pertwee. Hello? Hello? He said, I had exactly the same reaction, don't worry. And they said, no, we're gobsmacked. Our mouths are hanging open, we can't believe this. He said, why? He said, may we read you our short list that we've compiled 18 months ago? He said, yes. And they read it, and my name was second on it. It was the most extraordinary thing, and we never knew. I promise you, nobody knew. Daniel Evans didn't know when he suggested it. Nobody knew, but I know for a fact that it was true because I knew a young girl who was a PA on the show, an assistant, and she said, no, you've been up for this for about 18 months. They've been talking about it. Now you're all dying to know who the first one was. Well, it was Ron Moody. Ron Moody. He was going to do it, but he couldn't do it, and so I was lucky I got it. Now, there's a story interesting about this. I did a play in London called There's a Girl in My Soup, which was a tremendous hit in England and on Broadway. And so I went to America to play this with Gig Young. Gig Young, myself, and Barbara Ferris. And we did the tour of America, but they never give you a contract for the Broadway production because they're very fly like that. They don't want to give it away. They said, we'll do you the tour, and then you have another contract for Broadway if it comes. Well, we were a smash hit on the road, so I was just about to sign my contract for Broadway, when an irate producer came from England, and he said, what the hell's them are you doing here? You're supposed to be in England. You're supposed to be doing a pilot for this show. I said, what pilot? He said, we gave you the script based on a character that you played in a thing called Beggar My Neighbour, where you and Reg Varney and Peter Jones and June Whitfield and Patty Coombs, you did this show, and it was very successful, and you played a bank manager, and we've written this whole series round this. And you're supposed to be doing it. And I said, well, you never gave me the script. You never said anything positive. You didn't give me a contract. They said, well, anyway, we are offering it to you now. You're going to come back and do the pilot. And I said, well, it's either coming back to do the pilot or something that may be a complete flop. And I'm giving up a smash hit success on Broadway. You must be joking. No, there's no way. I'm not coming back. And so they said, oh, all right, we'll have to give it to somebody else. And they did. They gave it to Arthur Lowe, and it's called Dad's Army. Could you believe it? I turned down Dad's Army. But still, after all, people turn down the Beatles, and they can't be right all the time. I came back, of course, and I saw Arthur Lowe. Nobody in the world could be funnier than Arthur Lowe. I mean, he corpses me. It's superb. I watch it over and over and over again. My cousin, Bill, of course, is in it, and he tells me all sorts of wonderful stories about Arthur. I could never have played it like that, but Mark, I probably wouldn't have had to. They let me play it in my own way. Sean Sutton, who was the head of programs, said, you want to play Doctor Who? I said, let's have lunch. He said, yeah, okay. At the end of lunch, he said, you want to play it? And I said, let me think about it. He said, okay. So I thought about it, and he rang me up and said, do you want to play Doctor Who? And I said, can we have another lunch? And he said, yeah. So we had another lunch, and he said, do you want to play Doctor Who? And I said, let me think about it. And I rang him up a week later, and I said, do you do dinners? And he said, yeah, go on, we'll have a dinner. So we had a dinner, and he said, do you want to do a Doctor Who? And I said, yes. But how do I play it? And he said, as Jon Pertwee. And I said, who the hell's that? I've never been Jon Pertwee. Never. I've no idea who Jon Pertwee is. I've hidden under a green umbrella all my career like Peter Sellers. I've never been me. And not, up till that time I hadn't been. So he said, oh, don't worry, we'll find you. And so I got the job, and I did the very first one, and my God, was I embarrassed. When I look now at those scenes when I'm standing in front of a mirror trying on funny hats, and that awful, embarrassing scene in a shower with a shower hat. Oh, terrible. But luckily my producers left, and Barry Letts, the actor, he came in and took over, and he really knew about actors, and he understood what I was trying to do, and I wanted to play a character for the first time in my life, straight down the middle, to play it for real, make it believable, even though I was all flamboyant and this folk hero figure, you know, with a frilly shirt. And that was an accident, because they wanted me to do something for the front page of the Radio Times, and I went to my wardrobe and I found a velvet smoking jacket, which was rather trendy at the time, and a Mr. Fish frilly shirt, and I found a pair of black trousers and some elastic-sided boots that I'd worn in pantomime, and a cape that my grandfather used to wear, an Inverness cape. And so I put this on. Ah! You may remember that photograph. Wah! And they looked at it, they said, that's damn good. I said, well, yeah, but how the hell do we explain it away in the first program? He said, oh, we'll find a way. And we did. You remember, I came out of the hospital bed, and I went into the changing room where all the doctors were, and I nicked various articles of clothing, a cape from an eccentric old man, and a hat, which we abandoned, and Tom Baker picked up with afterwards, thank God. And everything else was pinched from this locker room. And then I went out and I pinched the old man's car, and that was the beginning of Bessie. You know, driving the old Edwardian roadster. And so when I said to the brigadier, can I keep these clothes in the car? He said, no, you can't. You've got to give them back, but we'll get you some others like it. And so for all the years I was in Doctor Who, I wore these flamboyant, lovely clothes. The cape sort of represented the wings of the mother hen, you know, with the chicks underneath. And it was rather symbolic, I thought. So I had 5 glorious years playing Doctor Who. Barry Letts, I say, was a wonderful producer. He gave me full rein to allow me to do what I wanted to do, because it was gadgetry. I had, if I rang up Barry and said, I've just seen a motorcycle that folds up into a briefcase, he said, good, get it, we'll put it in the programme. And we did. I mean, all those gadgets. Remember the Hoomobile, that amazing car? Well, I designed that with a fellow called Peter Farris from Nottingham, this extraordinary motor car. And wherever I drove it, the police would say, get in there. And I'd press the button, the lid would go up, and he'd come up and say, oh, blimey, it's you. And I said, I know what you're doing. You want to see this, don't you? I said, well, it's not too wide. The lights aren't too high. And it isn't a hovercraft, and we had to go through all this hassle. Until eventually I got a low loader. We put it on a low loader because cars were looking, saying, God, blimey, and they'd run into each other. And it caused chaos on the roads. And so we were very careful with it. Still going, still looking after it. The young man looks after it. I let him have it because he lost his mother under very tragic circumstances. And so the father said, can we have the car for him, and I'll look after it. Whenever you want it, you can have it back. Barry Letts sent for me when he hadn't been very long, and he said, look, I've got to have a chat to you. He said, I don't think you're taking this thing very seriously. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're always laughing about. I mean, you're always laughing. You're all in hysterics. You and Katie Manning are in hysteria all the time. John Levine, can't get a word out of him. He's always laughing. What's going on? He said, we've got a job to do. And I said, Barry, have we ever been late? He said, no. I said, have we ever dried up badly or held you up? He said, no. And I said, have we sort of held up production in any way? He said, no. And I said, then what the hell are you worrying about? I said, what I'm doing is I'm making people have fun. And if people have fun, you get work done. Look at you doing a factory floor or something and everybody's enjoying themselves. You get much more work done. In anything, teamwork, teams, tug-of-war teams. If you all hated each other, you'd never do anything. But the fact that you're all together pulling, that's what makes it good. And that's what made it good with us. Nick Courtney, in Inferno, wore a black patch and a scar. And he had his back turned to us. And I said, I don't know what we'll do. And Caroline John and myself and John Levine, I said, we'll all put scars on our faces and we'll all have black patches. And when he's got his back to us, and we'll go in and we'll say, he's going to turn around and he said, now look here, doctor, I've told you before. I said, you'll take one look at us and you'll corpse him. See, so we did this and we all put the black patches on and we would, I said, come on, put yourself together, John, because John Levine was in hysterics before he started. And they came through the door, and I went, which was the cue for Nick to turn round. And Nick turned round, he looked at me and he said, now look here, doctor, I've told you before, and I won't tell you again. He paid no attention whatsoever. So all of us fell on the floor laughing, and the director got furious and chucked us all out and said, stop buggering about, for Christ's sake. Let's get on with it and do it properly. You can't throw Nick. A wonderful guy, superb. I work with him all the time. Whenever I do any shows I can, I use Nick. And so the whole team was great. Roger and John and Richard Franklin, Katie, Liz Sladen, all of us get on tremendously well. All the doctors, well, not all, most of the doctors. Patrick Troughton, he and I were in the Navy together. He was very eccentric. When he was in MTBs. And when he used to go out in action and it was cold, he wore a tea cosy on his head. I've got a wonderful photograph of Pat going out to sea on the bridge with a tea cosy on his head. He said, it's always so bloody cold. He said, I can't remember. A tin hat, ridiculous thing. He said, tea cosy. When we were working together, we were doing a thing called the Three Doctors with Bill Hartnell. And poor Bill was very sick. He couldn't appear really with us. We shot him all on a screen, on a visual screen. Pat and I worked together, and Pat was under the TARDIS console, and he's supposed to say something like, I put the chine screw in the Roxit, see? And I'm supposed to say, but that's not where it should be. And he said, oh God, I've dropped it. And I said, stop, cut, hold on. Sorry, what was that, Pat? He said, what? And I said, what was that you said? He said, well, malign. I said, it wasn't. You said, oh God, I've dropped it. You're supposed to say something completely different. He said, oh, Christ, that's near enough. And I said, no, it is not. I said, I'm the doctor now, not you. I said, you say the cue and be done with it, because I can't, I need cues. Oh, God, blimey, he said, wonderful man. One day he said to me, I said, I'm going up to do a show up in the north Pebble Mill at 1. Do you want to come with me because they're going to talk about Doctor Who? He said, no. I hate those sort of things. I said, come on with me because we'll go out and have a nice lunch. And he said, oh, all right, go on then. I said, the tickets are all paid. So he came up, and he came up with me, and we did the interview. And halfway through, we got a message, and the message said, would you care to come and have lunch at this factory that makes suitcases? And I said, yes, fine. So Pat said, no, I don't. I said, yes, you are. You come with me. So after the show was over, the car came to fetch us, a limo, took us to the factory. The director met us. We went into the director's lounge, we went to the director's dining room. We had a superb lunch with an excellent bottle of wine, and another bottle, and another bottle. A very good lunch. And then he said, would you care to come around the factory quickly, say hello to the people? And Pat, this time, extremely jolly. Almost had the tea cozy on his head. And he said, yes. He said, come on. We went around the factory, and we had a lovely time. We talked to everybody. And when we got back, the director said, would you just come into this room a minute, we've got something for you. And we went into the room, and there we had a whole set of suitcases with our initials on them. Beautiful, all packed inside each other. And Pat said, oh, thank you very much indeed. On the train going back, Pat said, do you often do shows like this? And I said, yeah. He said, do you get invited to lunch often? I said, yeah. He said, with bottles of wine like that? I said, yes, often. He said, and do you often get the presents like this? And I said, yes. And he said, can I come again? So I took him to Chicago, and we had the famous water pistol fight, which you've heard about. And we fought each other with water pistols, until eventually somebody gave me a water pistol that had a 5-gallon water tank on my back. And I got him from 140 feet. At least I would have done if he hadn't put up a golf umbrella. I love Pat. Very sad that he died. And it was a great, great team, and I enjoyed it. And I had 5 blissful years doing that, doing all my own stunts, because Terry Walsh allowed me to do them. Or he did all the falls and I did the stunts. And he said, right. And when I left, he gave me a lovely sword. And he said, to Jon Pertwee, the best acting double in the business. Lovely compliment. Lovely chaps. I mean, I remember once when Billy Horrigan, one of the stuntmen, I'd had a bit of an argument with him. And he came towards me and I went, hey, saw, to throw him over my head. And he came and I went, hey, and got a hernia. And I said, Billy, what the hell happened? Why did you do this? He said, there was that little matter we were talking about, just now, about that, where we had a little disagreement about, you know what I mean? And I said, I'm terribly sorry, you were absolutely right. He said, oh, no, I told you I was right. And I said, yeah, you are. I do apologise, Billy. He said, that's quite all right, John. And he said, right, stand by, everybody. Billy came toward me. Right, cha! And he went about 40 feet in the air, which just shows you, see, you get a good man, a good stunt man behind you, you can do it. But I don't think that I could do him if you knew seeing Aikido anymore. I did Doctor Who on radio, the first Paradise of Death. Tremendously successful. So successful the BBC said, marvellous, we'll do a repeat. And they waited for 9 months before they did the repeat. Really speedy stuff, And they put the repeat on, and they put on episode 1, 2, 3, 4. They said, next week, the denouement, the last week of Paradise of Death. And they put on episode 4 again. And thousands of people rang up and said, what the hell's going on? We've heard this last week. And they said, oh my God, we are sorry. Well, we can't do it next week because the Queen's making a speech. We'll have to do it week after. And they did. By this time the rhythm had gone from it. But nevertheless, they got together and they thought, that's funny. This really must be a very popular program, because if thousands of people ring up as they have and complain bitterly of us putting the program on twice, how many people must be listening to it? So that gave them an idea. So they said, well, do another one. And we did another one. And Barry Letts wrote it. It's called The Ghosts of End Space. And we recorded it 9 months ago. And about 4 months ago, they said, oh, yes, wonderful news. We're going to play The Ghosts of End Space. And we said, good. When? And they said, next year. Real speedy stuff. It may be something to do with the fact that Spielberg was supposed to have bought the rights. And maybe doing it, maybe he wants to have control of everything. I don't know whether that's it or not. Interesting. I got a call from a lady from the Evening Standard not long ago, and she said, congratulations. I said, what on? And she said that you're playing Doctor Who for Spielberg. And I said, I am? Marvellous. And she said, what did you know about it? I said, never heard of it. You're the first to tell me. What wonderful news. Thank you so much. And she said, you're putting me on. I said, no, I'm not. I said, in any case, the whole thing's stupid. Eric Idle's playing it. I said, I've read it in the papers and all the national press yesterday. And she said, no, he's not. I just called him up on the phone. He said he's never heard of it. He's not doing it either. They put it in. Dudley Moore was doing it. I had told a lovely story that somebody said to the head of Amblin, and they said, you do realise that the Doctor Who, if we do it in America, has got to have an English feel to it. It's English, 100% English. It's got to have an English feel. We got to have, therefore, an English actor, a mid-Atlantic actor to play it. And the head of the programme said, yeah. How about David Hasselhoff? Dear God. All that lumbering muscle running along a beach. I mean, can you imagine? Doctor Who, no. So, I don't know. I don't think it'll ever happen, if you want my honest opinion. I think they'll go on talking about it forever and they'll never get round to it. And if they do, Dudley Moore will probably play. 5 years with that. Then after that I did a show called Who Done It? A crime quiz, the first cerebral crime quiz going with Pat Mower. Pat got it right every single week. For 4 years, got it right every single week. Until one day I said, Pat, do you want to be on the show next week? He said, yeah. I said, do you want to be in it next year? He said, yeah. I said, then get it wrong. I said, you can't go on getting it right. But he did, and he didn't cheat. He used to watch, and he used to go up into his dressing room with pieces of paper, sheaves of paper, and he'd go on and on and on and said, that's it, I've got it. The last season, he wasn't in it because he did get it right all the time, and it got rather boring. Anushka Hempel never got anything right. Never. She didn't even understand the game. We played it 4 years, but she never understood it. But she was bliss. She was absolute bliss. She looked gorgeous, so who cared? And she was wildly popular. Of course, people said, bloody hell, she's thick, isn't she? I knew that. I could tell who the bloody murderer was straight away. Thick. Him old smart ass there, don't I? Anyway, I did that for 4 years. And then when that was over, I was asked to do a film. I was asked to do a big picture by Keith Waterhouse and Willis Hall. They said, would you like to make a movie of Wurzel Gummidge? And of course I'd read it as a book, as a child, Barbara Eufen Todd's books in the 30s. And it had been played on radio with Norman Shelley and been enormously successful. And I loved the books. And I said, oh, yes, I'd love to. They remembered the character, the postman. They remembered this West Country character that I played. So they said, would you like to play it? Now, unfortunately, we couldn't get it off the ground. It was very sad. No money, we couldn't get the distribution. And so they abandoned it. And I said, please don't do that. Write me a pilot. And they wrote me a very short pilot. And I took it to Sean Sutton and said, Sean, you're a lucky chap. I said, I did 5 years with you, Doctor Who, and I shot the figures up, and I'll do the same for you with this. Read that, Wurzel Gummidge, wonderful. And he read it and said, it'll never go. Never go. I said, why? He said, no, far too fantastic. It'll never go. So I said, I think you're foolish. And I took it to Thames Television, where I'd done Who Done It? And I gave it to Philip Jones, and I said, there you are, Philip, aren't you lucky? Sean Sutton turned it down. He said, oh, good, let me read it. And he read it, and he read, no. No, it'll never go, I began to lose confidence in this show. So I gave it eventually to Lewis Rudd, a very perspicacious man from Southern Television. And he said, oh, I think this is wonderful, it's magic. And we did it, and it took us 18 months to get it on the air. It was certainly the greatest fun thing that I've ever been involved with. I loved it. Because you ran the gamut of emotions from A to Z in 25 minutes. And if you got stuck, you changed your head. Which was an idea I had, because with the TARDIS, you see, you can go forward and back in time. And I thought, well, that's what we can do with Wurzel. He takes his head off and puts another head on. So he can be anything. He can be a singing head, or a writing head, or a thinking head, or any kind of daft head. And so it worked. And within weeks, well, you all know what happened to it. It became one of the top-rated shows in the country. We had 12.5 million viewers a week, and we were on at 5:30 in the afternoon. We knocked Doctor Who into a cocked hat, which was funny, because I'm knocking myself into a cocked hat, because my repeats were showing at the time. But we had enormous success with it, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, because I'll tell you for why, because when I were doing Doctor Who, say, yeah, I were number 3. And when I was doing Wurzel Gummidge, I was number 1. There weren't nobody, apart from radio, but nobody on Tellywelly did it. So I done it there for Tellywelly, and I had somebody nice to do it with old Eunice Stubbs. She's proper, she is. She's lovely. She's a right bitch in the show, but she's lovely. And Jeffrey Bell done what plays the Crow Man. He were lovely too. And one day we were doing a scene together, Jeffrey and I just said, Mr. Gromancer, I'd done the most terrible thing. I said, I've torn one of my Aunt Sally's legs off, and there's only one thing for it, and that's to put me on the compost heap. He said, Wurzel, I think you're right. I can't think. And the tears were coming down, and I stopped in the shop and said, what the bloody hell are you crying for? I said, I'm supposed to be doing the crying here, not you. He said, I can't help it, it's so new. So we had a lot of people in tears with that. It was lovely. A gorgeous show to do. I remember Beryl Reid playing my mother, who was supposed to chase me with a pitchfork. And she was chasing me along with this pitchfork, and she was going about that much every 5 minutes. And I said, oh, Beryl, for God's sake, come on, give us a chase or a prod or something. I'm going to run away from something. And she didn't. And the director said, come on, Beryl, move your stumps. I mean, chase him. He's going to be frightened of you. And she said, darling, I was booked for the acting, not the bloody running. Gorgeous show to do. I'm now doing an animated version of it, of Wurzel, in plasticine, and we're looking for the finance to make it now. We've got the company to make it, and we've made the pilot, but it's very expensive making animated cartoons, but very lucrative because the merchandising is very good on anything to do with animation. Yes, very important. The carry-on films. Peter Rogers, the director and the producer, they both said to me, do you want to be in the carry-ons? I said, no. I said, because I'm very busy in the film business. I'm making a lot of films, British quota pictures, granted, not international movies. And I said, because all your marvellous actors you've got, like Kenneth Connor, Kenneth Williams, Sid James, are terrific actors. I mean, really great actors. And what are they doing now? Nothing but carry-ons. Their career is finished. They just do carry-ons. That's all they can do. And this is what Kenneth Williams' whole career was ruined by that. Oh, I mean, he did a lot of other things as well, but as an actor, it was. So I didn't want this to happen to me. But eventually Peter rang me and said, look, I'd like you to do this, because I think you could stand up to Kenneth Williams. He said, he's causing us a lot of trouble at the minute. And I said, why, what's he doing? He said, well, he's gone so far now, is that when visitors come onto the set, he turns round and moons them. I'm sure that some ladies who don't know what mooning is, somebody would explain it to them. And he used to actually drop his trousers and moon to the people that came in on the floor. And they said, Kenneth, please, what are you doing? And he said, and he did his moon. And so they said, perhaps you could stop him. And I said, oh, thanks very much. Nobody can stop Kenneth, and they never could. I mean, he used to do dreadful things to Charlie Hawtrey. Charlie Hawtrey used to have a plastic bag. In it were 5 woodbines, the Times crossword and a pencil, and a sarnie and an apple. And every single day, Kenneth Williams stole it and hid it. Every day. And Charlie would say, where's my plastic bag? And everybody would go, ah, you got this in the set. Oh, every day it went on, all this hoo-ha. So I did 4. For the first one I did, I looked like a very old Yorkshire Terrier with hair all over here playing the soothsayer in Carry On Cleo. I did Carry On Cowboy. The script was quite funny, and I said, can I make him blind? He said, yeah. He said, yes, go on. Yeah. Can I make him deaf? He said, yeah, go on. So I made him everything. So when you see him, the cowboy, he couldn't see, he couldn't hear, and he walked into walls and got on his horse backwards and made a bit of fun out of it. Then I played a very strange character, didn't I? I turned a thumb into a monster. I don't know what that one was. What was it? Carry On Screaming, I think. Anyway, they were fun, but they were just cameos, and I enjoyed it. I had fun in all of them, except the last one, and dear God, that was the worst films ever made. Carry On Columbus. Now, here's a funny joke about that. My wife said that Susie, your agent, she'd rung up, and she said that there's a marvellous job for John, is in Columbus. Now, I knew that Gerard Depardieu was playing this big Columbus film, and I thought, wonderful. I'm going to be in a Depardieu film, marvellous. They said, the script's coming tomorrow. And I waited for the postman to come, and the script came through the door, and I rushed, and I opened it, and it was Carry On Columbus. I'd never been more disappointed in my life. And when I got down there the very first day, I walked into the makeup room, and there was one of our most eminent actresses, Maureen Lipman, and I said, hello, Maureen, dear, and she said, hello, darling. I said, what are you doing here? And she said, same as you, dear, trying to earn a buck. I said, but not in Carry On Columbus. And she said, yes. I said, you in Carry On Columbus? She said, you wait till you see the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's going to marry you. That was T.P. McKenna, one of our top dramatic actors. He only had one line, they cut that out.
No, you can't make a picture and try to make somebody into Kenneth Williams. Julian Clary cannot be anybody but Julian Clary. Didn't work. We forget about that one. I want to do what Leslie Phillips does. I want to be a character actor in other people's shows. Now, I don't necessarily want to have things hung round my own neck. I'd like to do things for other people, like Leslie does, playing wonderful character roles in other people's shows. I did it in a show called Virtual Murder, playing an old Basque terrorist who is also, he used to own pawn shops. But eventually, as he was dying, he thought that he'd make good, and he tried to better himself. It was a tremendous part and very well written and the best thing I think I've ever done. And nobody looked at it at all because the show wasn't very successful. And the critics, they looked at about the first three of them. I was the fourth. And so they weren't looking, so I got no notices and nobody saw it. It was a great tragedy, but that's the way it goes in our business. But nevertheless, I'm still sort of hoping for something interesting like that will happen. At the moment, I've got a lady in America who's just taken a tape of mine because there's a chance that I may play a part that was offered to John Gielgud. But they said that he was too old. That worried me. Would you believe that anybody could be in show business as long as I have? I'm 76, and I've been in show business for 60 of those years, and there I get caught by Noel bloody Edmonds. He said, would you go along and do this show? I was doing a show at the time there called Scrooge with Tony Newley. And they said, would you like to go along and do this sort of Desert Island Discs? And I said, yes. And I went there, and immediately things started going wrong when we broke down, and the poor disc jockey in Manchester was having a lot of problem, and he was crackling, and I couldn't hear him. And then I asked for various records, and they couldn't hear me, and they put the wrong records on. And then the water started coming through the ceiling. And halfway through, the fellow said, oh, incidentally, Noel Edmonds is up here in the studio. Have any objection to coming in afterwards, have a picture taken? And I said, no, not at all, I know him very well. I still didn't realise. And when he came in at the end, if you saw it, and he said, hello, John. He said, what have you been doing? And I said, oh, you'll never believe this. You'll never believe it. And he went, oh, yeah. And he said, oh, by the way, this is for you. And he handed me the Gotcha Award. I said, thanks very much, but I've never done a Gotcha. And he said, you want to bet? And only then, that was the first time that I realised it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable you could be so stupid after all these years. Well, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed. I've had a most wonderful time. I don't know about you. But I've had a lovely time, and thanks for your attention and for your humour. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.